Widowed Millionaire hid to see how his fiancée treated his triplets until the maid intervened. That night, the storm slammed into Pacific Heights as if it wanted to drag the whole city down into the bay. Wind pounded against the giant glass panels of Horizon House, the cliffside mansion hanging over the ocean, making the entire block of concrete and glass hum. The sky outside was ink black, torn open now and then by cold white lightning. Inside, everything was so quiet, Emily Reyes could hear her own wet shoes on the stone floor. Her cheap denim jacket clung to her, dripping a trail across the polished tile. She'd had to run the last stretch when the bus gave up in the downpour and dumped everyone out on the street. 24, full-time waitress, part-time nursing student, going home to a cramped Oakland apartment where her chronically ill mother waited. Being tired was normal. But tonight she needed the tip from this high-end catering drop to pay for next month's meds. There was no other option. "Delivery for the Cole event," Emily said, setting the sleek metal containers on the bright stainless steel counter. The chef just grunted without looking up. Emily slid the receipt toward him. "Could you sign this, please? I've got to catch the last bus." A messy signature. No, thank you. Emily folded the damp paper, stuffed it into her pocket, and turned toward the service door. 11:20. If she left now, she'd make it. If not, half of what she'd earned would vanish into a rideshare fare, or she'd walk through neighborhoods you didn't walk alone in after 8 p.m. Her hand had just grazed the doorknob when she heard it. Not one cry. 3. Raw, broken, strangled. Like 3 tiny chests fighting for each breath. The sound floated down from somewhere upstairs, cutting through the perfume and wood polish, spearing straight into Emily's chest. For a heartbeat, Horizon House disappeared. She was back in that old, cramped apartment, floor slick from a leaky roof, her mother shouting into the phone, and Emily herself clutching the too small body of Lily. Her baby sister's lips turned purple, eyes wide and wild, her cries fading each time the 911 operator said, "Please hold." That cry. It was the same cry. No, Emily told herself, but her feet had already left the mat. "Where are you going?" a voice called from the kitchen. "Bathroom," she threw back without slowing and turned down the hallway. The staircase up to the second floor looked like something out of a movie. Dark wood, cold steel railing, warm lights glowing up from the steps. The higher she climbed, the weaker the cries became, stretched thin, breaking, like 3 little ghosts sinking underwater. Emily swallowed hard, trying to make her worn sneakers as silent as possible. At the end of the upstairs hallway, a door stood slightly ajar, a spill of golden light cutting across the floor. She nudged it open. The nursery was blindingly bright, white and spotless, perfection to the point of being eerie. In the center of the room stood 3 identical cribs, and in each crib lay a baby boy. Liam, Javier, Noah, names Emily recognized from the articles about the Cole heirs. Their faces were beet red, eyes screwed shut in pain, chests rising and falling in jerky, uneven gasps. Tiny arms clawed at the air, reaching for something that wasn't there. By the window, in a gray velvet armchair, a woman sat with her legs crossed. Victoria Hale, Emily recognized that face from articles about the perfect fiancé of tech mogul Nathan Cole. Silver silk gown molded to her body, blonde hair twisted into a flawless knot, nude polish shining on manicured nails. But that beautiful face was twisted now in one pure emotion: irritation. "Enough," Victoria muttered, reaching over to squeeze Noah's skinny wrist hard enough to make him choke. "Aren't you tired of screaming? You sound like little animals." Emily stopped in the doorway, every muscle locking. Every instinct she had told her to turn around, pretend she'd seen nothing, keep herself safe. But something else flickered at the edge of her vision. Through the crack of the opposite door, a man stood in the shadows. Tall, broad-shouldered, his black suit swallowing the light. His hands covered his face, but Emily recognized him anyway. Nathan Cole. Owner of the house, the man who owned a whole tech empire, hiding behind his office door, watching this like a drowning man clinging to a rock. He didn't step in. He didn't say a word. Emily heard her own voice before she decided to speak. "Excuse me." She tapped lightly on the nursery door. I heard the babies. I was wondering if I could help." Victoria's head snapped around. Her gaze slid from Emily's soaked jacket to her cheap jeans, then down to her worn sneakers, stopping on the hands still trembling from the cold. "And you are?" Her voice was thin and sharp as a blade. "Emily, I'm the food delivery," Emily swallowed. "I don't mean to interfere, it's just, the babies don't look okay." A smile curved on Victoria's lips, beautiful and ice cold. "They're just fussy. Babies do that? You think you know better than the nurses and nannies I pay for?" Emily forced the image of Lily out of her mind, Lily in her arms, eyes wide and scared. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "If you'd let me. I have some experience with little ones. I just want to try." Victoria laughed, dry and humorless. "Fine, waitress. If you can do what trained professionals couldn't, I'll clap for you. Go on, impress me." "Waitress" landed like a slap, but Emily didn't let it touch her. All she could really see were 3 flushed faces and 6 tiny fists shaking in the air. She stepped up to the first crib, wiped her hands quickly on her jacket, then slid one arm beneath Liam's head, lifting his whole body carefully against her chest. He was burning up, heart racing so fast, Emily had to breathe slowly just to keep from panicking with him. "You're okay," she whispered, not sure if it was in English or Spanish. "I'm here now." She unknotted the disposable apron still hanging loosely around her waist, folded it into a long strip, wrapped it tightly around herself as a makeshift sling, and gently tucked Javier inside so his body rested flat against her. With her free arm, she scooped Noah up and drew him tight to her hip. 3 tiny bodies pressed into her, trying to crawl deeper, escaping the storm outside and the storm in this very room. Emily closed her eyes, letting her body find its own rhythm. She began to sing, very softly, the lullaby her mother used to hum in Oakland during blackouts, when they'd lie on their only mattress and Lily would curl up between them like a small cat. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it was warm and steady. She swayed, slow and gentle, letting her heartbeat sink with their ragged breaths. The crying ebbed. Their breathing eased. Liam went quiet first, tiny fingers hooking into Emily's collar. Javier yawned, huge for someone so small, eyelids drooping until they shut. Noah, the one who'd only been gasping a moment ago, let out a long, shuddering sigh, his head growing heavier on her shoulder. In a matter of minutes, the room that had been full of wailing became a fragile bubble of calm. Only the rain against the glass and Emily's fading song remained. Victoria stood frozen, her proud smile gone. Across the room, behind his door, Nathan slowly lowered his hands. He stared at the scene, a drenched girl with nothing, holding the most fragile pieces of his world in her arms, doing what he and his perfect fiancée could not, and felt something crack in his chest. As for Emily, in that moment she clung to one thought, sharp and fierce as claws in her heart. Not this time. No more lilies. She would not let another child die in silence while she was still standing. When the last trace of crying faded into the steady breathing of the 3 infants, Emily finally realized her hands were trembling. Not from the cold, but from the fear that if she'd arrived just minutes later, something terrible might have happened. Victoria stood frozen, eyes wide as if witnessing something that didn't belong in her world, a world where everything could be bought. "All right," Victoria said, her voice trying to sound composed, though humiliation cracked underneath. "You clearly have a gift." Emily didn't reply. She only held the babies close until she knew their breathing was steady. Nathan, still hiding behind the opposite door, stepped back when Emily accidentally glanced in his direction. He vanished as quietly as a ghost. Then Victoria said something that made Emily's heart jolt. "Would you like to work here? Night shift? I pay better than any restaurant." Emily blinked. Are you serious?" "I don't have time to deal with them all night." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Nathan doesn't know what to do with babies. If you're interested, come back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Emily wanted to refuse. She had her main job, school, and her sick mother waiting for her. But the image of those 3 red, gasping babies kept flashing in her mind. If she wasn't here, what would happen? "Yes, I'll come." That night, as the bus rattled through the wet streets, Oakland appeared in its usual worn colors, peeling paint, muffled arguments behind thin walls, the elevator groaning like an old man in pain. Their apartment was so small that Emily felt she could touch every wall without moving her feet. Her mother looked up from the sofa, coughing but smiling softly. "Working late again, sweetheart?" Emily placed her tip money on the table, answering with a whisper she hoped sounded strong. "I'm fine, Mom." But later, lying on the sagging mattress with rain hammering the roof and cold seeping through the windows, Emily couldn't stop seeing the triplets' red, gasping faces. And in the stillness between thunder, Lily's memory cut through, her little sister's lips turning blue, her fragile cry fading, and the ambulance that never came because their neighborhood wasn't a priority. Emily curled tighter under the thin blanket. "Never again," she murmured. "I won't let it happen again." The next evening, Horizon House glowed under the Pacific Heights street lamps like a silent fortress guarding the sea. Emily knocked, and an older woman opened the door. Mrs. Dalton. Her silver hair was neatly pinned, her eyes sharp with the kind of fatigue that comes from watching too many secrets unfold beneath one roof. "You're Emily?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Follow me. There are things you need to know." They walked down a hallway lined with polished glass. Mrs. Dalton's voice echoed, steady and practiced. "No noise. Do not wake Ms. Victoria under any circumstances. Do not enter Meredith Cole's office, Mr. Nathan's late wife. Everything else, do your job well." Emily wanted to ask why, but Mrs. Dalton had already turned away. The conversation closed like a locked door. When Emily stepped into the nursery, the babies reacted instantly. Liam reached out to be held, Javier leaned forward with all his tiny strength, and Noah gripped the edge of the crib, smiling like a burst of sunlight. For a moment, Emily felt the entire cold room warm around her. "I'm here now," she whispered. "You're okay." But when she lifted Javier, she froze. Something was wrong. Milk was supposed to smell sweet and soft, not like this faint trace of chemicals. Familiar chemicals, the kind hospitals use to make infants fall asleep faster. Emily turned to the prepared bottle on the table. The cap wasn't tightened. The twist marks looked different. The feeding log at the bedside showed uneven handwriting, some numbers corrected in a different shade of ink. A slow chill crept up her spine. She bent lower and spotted a small folded note tucked beneath a blanket. A woman's handwriting, hurried, careless. "If they fuss, use a few drops. They'll sleep fast." No label, no instructions, no name. And then came the detail that silenced her completely. The beige stuffed rabbit on the shelf. Tilted slightly, its glossy plastic eyes trained directly on her. The way the light hit them made them look disturbingly alive. Emily stood still, heartbeat slowing. She stepped closer, touched the soft ear, and felt an uneven stitch behind its head. A seam that didn't belong on a child's toy. A seam hiding something. Emily lifted her gaze, scanning the luxurious, unnervingly quiet room, and a single question settled into her bones. How many eyes in this house were watching her, without her knowing? The stuffed rabbit's glossy eyes clung to Emily as if waiting for her to tear open the secrets hidden inside. But before she could reach for it again, the wind from the ocean hissed against the glass panels and snapped her back to herself. She inhaled sharply, set Javier gently back into his crib, and stepped away. Every instinct she had was screaming that someone needed to hear what she had discovered, that if she stayed silent tonight, something darker might unfold. And despite her uncertainty, there was only one person she could turn to. She walked down the long hallway toward the back garden, where she finally spotted Nathan standing by the steel railing. The city lights far away cast faint gold patches across his face. He didn't hear her footsteps. He simply stood there, hands tucked deep into his coat pockets, shoulders slumped as if holding up something much heavier than fatigue. The cold air sliced through skin, yet Nathan seemed untouched by it. Emily approached slowly, her voice trembling. "Mr. Nathan, I need to talk to you." He turned, and Emily saw the shadows under his eyes, a kind of emptiness, like a sky waiting for a storm to fall. "What is it?" he asked, his voice rough, not angry, just worn down. Emily swallowed hard, then forced the words out before courage slipped away. "I think something is wrong with the babies. The bottle? It smelled strange. The feeding log was altered, and there was a note." She paused, locking her eyes on his. "Someone is giving them something they shouldn't." Nathan frowned, as though trying to untangle a knot too small to see. "What are you talking about? Victoria hired the best nurses. No one in this house wants to harm the children." "But I saw—" "Emily," Nathan interrupted, his tone still gentle, but colder now. "I understand you're worried, but you've only been here one night. Victoria has been caring for them since the day they were born. She isn't who you think she is." The sentence hit Emily like a door slammed shut in her face. She wanted to believe he was simply protecting himself, but the look he gave her, distant, guarded, felt like an accusation. "You believe her over me?" Emily whispered, not angry, just wounded. "Because she's perfect and I'm just a poor waitress." Nathan said nothing. He turned back toward the dark waves, his profile carved by the flickering garden lights. "I just think you may have misunderstood." And in that moment, Emily felt the truth sink in with a cold weight. She stood there, fists tightening around the hem of her jacket, her heart shrinking at the realization that if even one person believed her, just one, the world inside this house might shift. But that person was not Nathan Cole. After the conversation in the garden, Emily returned to the nursery with a heaviness that felt like stones dragging at her ribs. Loneliness had always been a shadow in Horizon House, but that night it pressed against her like a weight. Still, as she held Noah and felt his soft breaths against her fingers, she whispered to herself that she would protect them, even if no one stood with her. What she didn't know was that in that exact moment, Victoria had begun weaving her trap, silent, calculated, and disguised carefully as a string of harmless accidents. It began the next evening. Emily was rinsing bottles when a sharp crash echoed from the hallway. She rushed out and froze. A crystal vase, delicate, shimmering, expensive, lay shattered on the floor, glistening like broken ice. Victoria stood at the end of the hall, arms crossed, her silk dress catching the draft from the window. "You must be more careful, Emily," she said smoothly. "This belonged to Nathan's mother. It can't be replaced." "I didn't touch it." "You were the last one to walk past here," Victoria cut in, her eyes sharp enough to slice skin. Emily tried to defend herself, but house staff peeked out from their rooms. Their expressions wavered, uncertain whether they believed her or simply feared Victoria, but the way they looked at her made her shrink an inch inside. 2 days later came the issue with the receipt. Emily had placed it on the kitchen counter before preparing formula, yet minutes later it vanished. Mrs. Dalton looked around and sighed. "You have to keep track of these things, dear." Emily insisted she had left it right there, but Victoria entered with a gentle smile that made Emily's stomach twist. "No problem. We'll just deduct it from her pay." Then came the spilled orange juice. Emily walked across the white carpet with Liam in her arms when she suddenly noticed a trail of sticky orange liquid exactly along her path. A young gardener glanced over and whispered, "She must have spilled it." Nathan passed by at that moment, and the brief flicker in his gaze, sharp, uncertain, felt like a crack splitting open inside her. He didn't accuse her, but he hesitated, and that hesitation was worse. Over the next few days, objects went out of place in ways too deliberate to be coincidence. Towels slipped off racks. Toys appeared scattered on the floor. A jar of cream lay open, its contents dripping down the cabinet. Every time it happened during Emily's shift. And every time Victoria entered right afterward with a disappointed sigh, as if Emily's clumsiness were a personal betrayal. "In this house," a maid muttered as she walked past, "you don't want trouble if you want to stay employed." The words stung like a needle under Emily's skin. She wasn't careless, she wasn't lying, but somehow everything pointed toward her, as if the whole house tilted toward Victoria and pushed her into a corner. Each night she noticed the way Nathan looked at her shift, not cruelly, not angrily, just doubtfully, as if he was trying to piece together a puzzle with pieces Victoria had already replaced before he touched them. And the worst part wasn't that he doubted her. It was realizing he was beginning to believe exactly what broke her heart the most. The tension of the past days clung to Emily like cold mist, making every step feel fragile, as if she were walking on thin ice. But that night, as another ocean storm began to rage behind the glass walls, she steadied herself and prepared Liam's bottle the way she always did. She measured the formula, checked the water temperature, every movement precise, practiced, safe, familiar enough that she could have done it blindfolded. Liam drank peacefully at first, nestled against her shoulder. His eyelids fluttered, growing heavy. Then, without warning, his little body jerked once, then stiffened. Emily froze. His breathing shifted, ragged, shallow, wrong. She pulled him back to look, and her heart nearly stopped. Liam's face was turning blue. His eyes were wide open, but empty. His head lolled to one side like a doll with a snapped neck. "Liam? Liam, baby, look at me. Please, no, no," Emily whispered, voice breaking, but her hands stayed steady, instinct stronger than panic, fueled by memories she wished she could forget. She lifted the bottle to her nose, and the smell hit her instantly. A chemical sting. Familiar, horribly familiar. The same scent that haunted the hospital room where her sister Lily took her last breath. Without a second thought, Emily sprinted to the sink, dumped the bottle, scrubbed it until her hands burned. Then she tore open a brand-new sealed can of formula and mixed a fresh bottle with the desperation of someone fighting time itself. Holding Liam close, she prayed under her breath and fed him the new milk in tiny, trembling sips. A minute passed, an endless, brutal minute, before his small body shivered and softened. His breathing eased. The blue faded from his lips. His eyes fluttered closed. He was safe. Emily slid down to the floor, hugging him tight, tears dripping silently, unaware of when she had even begun crying. The next morning, Victoria arrived with Dr. Salazar and a smile polished to perfection. "We need to review the camera footage," she said lightly. On the large monitor appeared a clipped recording from the official nursery camera. Emily holding the bottle, stepping slightly out of frame, then offering it to Liam. "What did you put in the bottle, Emily?" Victoria asked, voice sweet as syrup. Emily stared at the screen, her mouth dry. She had no evidence, no way to prove the truth. And everyone in the room looked at her as if the answer was already obvious. The tense meeting dissolved into a heavy silence, leaving Emily alone in the nursery, where the faint chemical scent from last night's bottle still lingered in the air. Once everyone had left, she placed Liam gently into his crib, trying to steady her breath, though her heart kept pounding wildly. If she had been even a minute late last night, she couldn't finish the thought. While tidying the room, a small glint from the beige stuffed rabbit on the shelf caught her eye. Not a normal reflection, this was the sharp glint of a lens. Emily froze, then slowly picked up the plush toy. No, it can't be. She loosened the tiny seam along its back, and her stomach dropped. Inside was a micro camera, nothing like a household device, but something built for covert surveillance. A completely separate system from the official cameras Victoria had shown earlier. Victoria had her own cameras, hidden cameras, watching the babies. And watching Emily. A chill crawled up her spine. If Victoria was organized enough to splice footage, cold enough to drug a baby, then this was only the beginning. And Emily knew exactly where the rest of the truth would be buried. The office of Nathan's late wife, Meredith. The room Mrs. Dalton had strictly forbidden her to enter. But Emily had no choice anymore. She slipped through the hallway, her breath thin and trembling. The office door was slightly ajar, as if someone had recently left. Dust lined the desk, but the bottom drawer was suspiciously clean. Emily pulled it open, and the documents inside made her blood freeze. A thick folder labeled Infant Behavioral Intervention Center, Colorado. Notes: treatment duration 6 to 12 months. Minimize father-child contact. She flipped to the next page. An email printed out, signed Victoria Hale. We must eliminate the children before the wedding. Nathan is too soft. Once it's done, the $2.8 billion estate will be secure. Emily's hand shook violently. Oh my God, she's unhinged. She rushed to pull out her phone, snapping photo after photo. Each image felt like a blade cutting into the truth, deadly, necessary, undeniable. She was about to capture the final page when Nathan's voice sliced through the silence behind her, cold enough to make her jump. Emily, what are you doing in my wife's office? She turned slowly, blood draining from her face. Nathan stood at the doorway, no longer looking sorrowful, only furious, betrayed, disappointed. You don't understand, Emily whispered. I have proof. Victoria is... Enough. His voice cracked like a restrained snarl. You crossed a line. This is my family's private space. You had no right. A hollow collapse echoed inside her chest, quiet but devastating. She couldn't convince him. She couldn't explain. The evidence in her hands suddenly felt weightless, useless. For the first time, Emily felt truly alone. Rumors that Emily had broken into Meredith's office spread through Horizon House like poison gas. By evening, Victoria summoned her to the living room, where warm lights did nothing to soften the cold atmosphere. As Emily entered, she saw Nathan, Attorney Ellis, Dr. Salazar, and the family pastor sitting in a line, like an intervention for someone on the brink of collapse. Victoria stood before them, composed to the point of theatrical perfection. Emily, she began, voice sweet as frosting, we're worried about you, all of us. She placed a hand on her chest, adopting the posture of a wronged angel. You're overworked, stressed, perhaps even imagining things. Attorney Ellis pushed up his glasses. Miss Reyes, we have evidence that you exceeded your professional boundaries. Entering private quarters, exhibiting signs of psychological instability. Dr. Salazar, who had met Emily only once, sighed sympathetically. Stress can distort perception. You may have misinterpreted certain situations. Nathan remained silent, his hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor. Not a single word of defense, not even a glance. Emily felt something inside her tighten painfully. Victoria clasped her hands. We're offering two options. One, accept $10,000 and sign a non-disclosure agreement to protect this family's privacy. Two, leave immediately and cease contact with the children. Emily inhaled deeply. "I'm not taking a cent. I didn't do anything wrong." "You should reconsider," Victoria murmured. "I already have." The family meeting ended like a courtroom without a judge, and Emily knew it was only the beginning. 3 days later, at Victoria and Nathan's extravagant engagement party, chandeliers glittered like icicles. As guests toasted, Victoria sweetly requested to play a tribute video for the staff. Seconds later, the screen lit up with edited footage. Emily taking a money envelope from a drawer, spliced from 2 separate videos. Emily breaking the vase. Emily spilling orange juice. And finally, Emily holding Liam's bottle, followed by the clip of the baby turning blue. The crowd erupted in shock. Someone shouted, "My God, what kind of monster is she?" Another man yelled, "Call the police!" Emily stood frozen in the sea of horrified faces, her head buzzing as if 1,000 bees were trapped inside her skull. "That's not me! You don't understand! Someone—" 2 guards seized her arms. "You need to leave, miss." "Nathan!" she cried. He looked at her longer than she expected, but did not move. Not a word. That was the moment her heart didn't just break. It dissolved. As she was escorted out the back door, a trembling hand grabbed hers. "Mrs. Dalton." She slipped a USB into Emily's palm and whispered, "It's the truth. Take it. Go. Hurry." Emily didn't ask questions. She ran. Later that night, in the tiny apartment of her downstairs neighbor, the only person in the building with a working old computer, Emily inserted the USB. The screen flickered, then a 2-hour file opened, and the truth flooded out like a black tide. Victoria pouring drops into the formula, Victoria pushing the vase, Victoria spilling orange juice along Emily's path, Victoria scattering toys, then summoning staff to discover the mess. Victoria on a call saying, "Those babies must disappear before the wedding. Nathan will thank me later." Emily watched and cried, but not from despair, from vindication. She backed up the video to 3 USBs, an email, and even her neighbor's dusty external drive. At 2 o'clock in the morning, she spotted a line in the documents. Monday, 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 days from now. Nathan to sign transfer for the children to a Colorado facility. Emily shot to her feet. Her eyes were red, but burning bright. "No, I'm not letting that happen." And she went back to Horizon House. That morning, the sky was as gray as Emily's chest, heavy but determined. She stood before Horizon House's front doors, rain soaking her jacket, hair clinging to her cheeks. The guards approached the moment they saw her. "You're not allowed inside," one said, hand on his radio. Emily clutched the USB tightly. "If you lay a finger on me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I'll scream at the gate until every reporter in the city shows up. Then we'll see who explains what." The guards hesitated. Before they could respond, a wave of crying echoed from the upper floor. 3 cries, frantic and devastated in a way only Emily could understand. Nathan appeared at the top of the stairs, drained and hollow-eyed. He looked at Emily for a long moment. Something in the baby's cries cracked through his doubt. "Let her in," he said. Victoria rushed up behind him, face tightening. "Nathan, are you insane?" She— "Enough," he said, voice sharp with steel for the first time. They gathered in the living room. Emily didn't waste time. She walked straight to the big television, plugged in the USB. "You need to watch this," she said. The screen lit up. 2 hours of footage played out in a room, growing colder by the second. No one spoke. Only rain tapped the windows as the truth unspooled. Victoria dripping chemicals into the formula. Victoria pushing the crystal vase. Victoria pouring the orange juice. Victoria staging every accident. Victoria on the phone saying, "Those babies need to disappear before the wedding. The $2.8 billion will be secure." Victoria shot to her feet. "This is fake. She edited it. Nathan, don't you dare." Nathan stood. His face had lost all color. His eyes glistened with disbelief and fury. "I heard your voice," he said. "There's nothing to deny." He grabbed the Colorado transfer papers from the table and tore them in half. The pieces fell like broken feathers. Then he removed the engagement ring and placed it in front of her. "Get out of my house!" Victoria broke down, clawing at his arm. "You'll regret this. I'll sue you, all of you." Victoria collapsed, crying, begging, threatening, but no one looked at her. Nathan turned away, and Emily exhaled a breath she'd been holding for far too long, finally stepping out of the nightmare that had crushed her for weeks. When all the doors of Horizon House closed behind the collapse of Victoria's schemes, the mansion seemed to shed the toxic air that had smothered it for far too long. Emily stood in the hallway, still trembling, unable to believe she had finally pulled 3 innocent lives, and herself, out of the darkness. Nathan walked toward her, his steps slow and heavy, stopping just a breath away. In that moment, the man who had once seemed distant and unreachable looked lost, small, painfully human. He knelt, no hesitation, no pride, no pretense, just a raw, aching truth. "Emily, I'm sorry," Nathan said, voice cracking. "I was blind. I left you alone when I should have protected you. If you hate me, I understand." Emily looked at him and saw not only remorse, but the anguish of a father who almost lost his children. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I don't hate you. You were a victim too. What matters is that the boys are safe." Nathan lowered his head, shoulders trembling with relief. In the days that followed, Horizon House transformed so completely that even Emily was surprised. Nathan offered her an official contract, so generous it made her breath hitch, and a private room inside the mansion so she could stay close to the boys. The room was small but warm, sunlight pouring through the windows each morning as if blessing her new beginning. Emily's mother visited one weekend. When she saw her daughter respected, valued, and finally living a life she deserved, she cried. "You earned this, sweetheart," she whispered through tears. Nathan, wanting to honor the courage Emily had shown, opened a chain of coffee shops employing low-income workers, an idea sparked by her strength and kindness. And then, quietly, naturally, something tender began to grow between them. Late-night conversations in the kitchen, long hours caring for the babies side by side, small moments filled with laughter and shared exhaustion, tiny stitches mending 2 worn hearts. One evening, while Emily was kneading dough, Nathan stepped close. A smudge of flour streaked her cheek. He smiled softly and brushed it away. His touch lingered. Emily froze, breath caught in her throat. They were standing too close. Neither moved. And then Nathan leaned in and kissed her, slow, gentle, as if the moment itself might shatter. Emily melted into the warmth, her heart blooming after so many bruised days. A few weeks later, the 5 of them, Nathan, Emily, Liam, Javier, and Noah, played in the garden under the honey-gold sunlight. Liam, once the fragile boy who nearly slipped away, reached out tiny arms toward Emily and called, "Mama Em." Emily froze. Her heart cracked open in the softest, brightest way. Because in that moment, she realized she hadn't just saved 3 children. She had saved her own heart.